3 days ago, I laughed while my daughters poured wine on my boyfriend's shirt because we thought he was too poor to matter. Today, that same man revealed he is the billionaire who just bought my mortgage and evicted us onto the street. My name is Jane Miller, and I am writing this from a damp mattress in a slum, listening to the echoes of a life I destroyed with a single moment of arrogance. I let my entitled children and my toxic ex-husband convince me that love was measured in price tags, never realizing that the man in the rusted truck was the one holding the keys to our survival. I traded a good man for a false sense of superiority, and his revenge was not to scream, but to simply sign a check that erased my entire existence. He looked at me with cold eyes and showed me that while I was worried about the cost of his clothes, he was calculating the cost of my character. Now, I have lost my home, my dignity, and the only man who actually saw me. I am drowning in regret and fear. Please tell me, is it ever possible to earn forgiveness after you have bitten the hand that was trying to feed you? My name is Jane Miller. I am 38 years old, though the mirror in the hallway insists I look older, especially around the eyes where the concealer settles into fine lines by noon. I work as a part-time administrative assistant at a dental practice 3 towns over, a job that barely covers the minimum payments on my credit cards, let alone the lifestyle I am desperately trying to project. I live in Westport, Connecticut, in a cul-de-sac where the grass is cut with laser precision and the silence is heavy with judgment. To the outside world, specifically the members of the Whispering Pines Homeowners Association, I am a success story of resilience. I am the brave single mother navigating life after a difficult divorce, raising 2 beautiful daughters, Bella and Chloe, in a colonial-style house that has been in my family's periphery for years. But the truth is a much colder, a harder thing to swallow. The truth is a stack of unopened envelopes from the bank sitting in the bottom drawer of my antique mahogany desk, hidden beneath piles of takeout menus. The late afternoon sun filtered through the sheer curtains, casting long, golden shadows across the living room. It was a perfect scene, one you might see in a catalog for expensive home goods. The beige sofa was fluffier than it had any right to be, and the scent of vanilla and sandalwood from a $30 candle filled the air. But my heart was hammering against my ribs, an erratic rhythm that had become my constant companion. "Mom, the Wi-Fi is lagging again." Bella's voice shattered the stillness. I flinched. At 12 years old, Bella had already mastered the tone of a dissatisfied customer demanding to speak to a manager. She was lounging on the love seat, her legs thrown over the armrest, glued to her iPad. Chloe, her 10-year-old shadow, was on the floor, aggressively tapping at her phone. "I will check it in a minute, sweetie," I said, forcing my voice into that sugary, placating register I use too often. "Maybe try restarting it?" "Ugh, I did that like 5 times. Bella groaned, not looking up. "Dad says you probably bought the cheap plan. He says you always try to cut corners." The mention of Mark sent a familiar spike of anxiety through my stomach. My ex-husband, the man who had walked out 3 years ago, but somehow still occupied every corner of this house like a haunting. Mark was 45, charming in a way that made you forget he had not held a steady job since 2015. He lived in a rented condo downtown, funded by God knows who, and spent his days criticizing my parenting while simultaneously undermining every rule I tried to set. "Your father has a lot of opinions for someone who is not here," I muttered, but I said it under my breath, loud enough to vent, quiet enough so they would not hear. I wanted to be their friend. I read all the blogs about gentle parenting, about validation. I was terrified that if I raised my voice, they would choose him. They would pack their bags and leave me alone in this big, drowning house. I walked over to the window and peeled back the curtain just an inch. I was waiting for Sebastian. My chest tightened. Sebastian Vance. We had been dating for 3 months. He was kind. He was stable. He listened when I talked, unlike Mark, who only waited for his turn to speak. But there was a problem that made my skin prickle with embarrassment every time he came over. Sebastian was, "So you Jing Hao Ling. 2# is greater than different." He did not fit the Westport aesthetic. A low, guttural rumble echoed down the quiet street, disturbing the peace of the cul-de-sac. I closed my eyes for a second, bracing myself. "Is that him?" Chloe asked, finally looking up from her phone. She crinkled her nose. "Is he driving that junk pile again?" "It is a truck." "Chloe, it is vintage." I lead. Though we all knew the difference between vintage and decrepit, I watched through the window as the faded red pickup truck turned into my driveway. It had rust spots on the wheel wells that looked like open sores. The engine sputtered and coughed before finally dying with a shudder. It sat there, leaking a small drop of oil onto my pristine pavement, directly next to my neighbor, Mistress Gable's brand new European sedan. I saw Mistress Gable pause while watering her hydrangeas. She adjusted her glasses, staring at the truck, then looked up at my house. She did not wave. She just watched. I felt a hot flush of shame crawl up my neck. I hated myself for it, but I hated the truck more. Why did he have to drive that thing? He knew where I lived. He knew how people talked. He looks like a gardener. Bella laughed, joining me at the window. "Look at his shirt. Is that flannel? Who wears flannel in October? It is not even cold yet. Stop it." "Bella," I said, but my voice lacked conviction. "He is nice to us." "Nice does not buy new AirPods," she retorted. Turning back to the sofa, I took a deep breath, smoothed down my dress, and opened the front door before Sebastian could ring the bell. I wanted to get him inside quickly, away from Mistress Gable's prying eyes. Sebastian was walking up the path. He was 40, with salt and pepper hair and a face that was handsome in a rugged, unpolished way. He wore, as Bella had noted, a faded plaid shirt and work boots that looked like they had seen better decades. He was carrying a small bouquet of wildflowers. Not roses, not lilies from the florist, but wildflowers that looked like he had picked them from the side of the road. "Hey," he smiled, the corners of his eyes crinkling. Traffic on the interstate was a nightmare. "Happy 3 months." He held out the flowers. "Hi," I said, taking them. They were wilting slightly. "Thank you." "You, Sao Yu Jing Hao Ling. 2# is greater than you parked in the driveway?" "Yeah? Is that okay?" He looked confused. "Or did you want me to park in the garage?" "No," I said quickly. "Just Sao Yu Jing Hao Ling. 2# is greater than maybe pull up a little further next time." The Homeowners Association gets picky about Sao Yu Jing Hao Ling. "Coxy, oil leaks." Sebastian looked back at his truck, then at me. His smile faltered. "Just a fraction." "Right. Sorry. I will get that seal fixed next week. I have just been busy with work." "Work?" I still was not entirely sure what he did. He told me he was in real estate, which in my experience usually meant unemployed or a struggling agent. Looking at his clothes and his car, I assumed he was perhaps a contractor or a handyman who flipped houses. I never pressed him on it. I was afraid of the answer. I was afraid he was just another Mark, broke and dreaming, but without the charm. Come inside. I ushered him in, closing the door firmly behind us, shutting out the judgment of the street. The air inside the house felt suffocatingly still. Sebastian wiped his boots on the mat with exaggerated care, clearly sensing my tension. "Girls," I called out, my voice high and tight. "Sebastian is here." From the living room, there was no response, just the tapping of glass screens and the low hum of the television. Sebastian walked into the living room. "Hey, ladies, how was school?" Bella did not look up. "Fine." Chloe did not even speak. She just sighed, a long, dramatic exhalation of air that signaled immense boredom. I stood there, paralyzed. This was the moment a mother should step in. I should demand they say hello properly. I should demand eye contact. But the fear seized me again. The fear of a tantrum. The fear that they would tell Mark I was forcing them to interact with a stranger. "They are just tired," I said to Sebastian, offering an apologetic smile that felt plastered on. "Homework was brutal today." Sebastian looked at the girls, then at me. His eyes were dark and observant. He did not look angry, which somehow made it worse. He looked like he was analyzing a structural flaw in a building. "Right," Sebastian said softly. "Homework." He placed a hand on my shoulder. His palm was rough, calloused. It felt real, grounding, but I instinctively pulled away slightly, pretending to need to arrange the flowers. I did not want to be touched. Not right now. Not when I felt like the walls were closing in. My phone buzzed in my pocket. I knew who it was before I looked. "Mark, heard the crab is over. Laugh out loud. Make sure he does not steal the silverware. Also, Bella needs money for the field trip. Transfer me 200. I stared at the screen. Mark called him the crab because of the way Sebastian walked, slightly stiff from an old injury. And because, according to Mark, he was a bottom feeder. I should have been angry. I should have defended the man standing in my living room. Instead, I felt a twisted sense of camaraderie with my ex-husband. Mark understood the pressure. Mark understood that appearances mattered. Sebastian, standing there in his work boots on my Persian rug, clearly did not. "Everything okay?" Sebastian asked, watching me stare at my phone. "Fine," I lead, slipping the phone back into my pocket. "Just Xiao Yu Jing Haling, 2 hashes greater than work." "Jane," Sebastian said, his voice lowering. "You seem on edge. Is it the house? The letters?" My heart stopped. I froze, the wildflowers clutching in my hand. "What letters?" "The ones on the desk." He gestured vaguely toward the study. "I saw the bank logo last time I was here. If you are in trouble, Xiao Yu Jing Hao Lin, Er Jing Hao Da Yu. I am not in trouble." I snapped. Too quickly, too loudly. The girls looked up, startled by my tone. I lowered my voice, forcing a laugh. "I am not in trouble, Sebastian. It is just Xiao Yu Jing Hao Ling. 2 hashes greater than administrative stuff. Refinancing. You know how banks are. Lots of paperwork." I could not tell him. I could not tell this man in the flannel shirt that I was drowning in debt because I was trying to maintain a life I could no longer afford. If I told him, he would look at me with pity. Or worse, he would offer to help with money he clearly did not have, and that would be humiliating for both of us. "Okay," Sebastian said, slowly. He did not believe me. I could see it. "I just wanted you to know I am here. Whatever you need, I need a glass of wine, I said, turning toward the kitchen, and maybe for you to not mention the bank in front of the children. As I walked away, I heard Bella whisper to Chloe, "Check out his shoes. Are those from Goodwill?" "Totally," Chloe whispered back. So embarrassing. I paused in the hallway, holding the wilting wildflowers. I should have turned around. I should have told them to stop, but I did not, because a small, dark part of me, the part that Mark had nurtured for 15 years, agreed with them. I looked at Sebastian through the reflection in the hallway mirror. He was standing there, patiently waiting, looking at the family photos on the mantle. He was a good man, but in my world, in this zip code, goodness was not a currency that paid the bills. I took a deep breath, put on my mask, and walked into the kitchen to pour the wine. The evening was just beginning, and I already felt like I was losing control. The foundation was cracking, and I was the only one holding up the roof. The dining room was a theater, and I was the anxious stage manager. I had set the table with my grandmother's bone china, the plates edged in delicate gold leaf that was slowly flaking away, much like my composure. In the center of the table sat a roast chicken, glistening with herbs and butter, a centerpiece intended to scream domestic perfection. But the air around the table was thick enough to choke on. Sebastian sat to my right. He had washed his hands and slicked back his hair, but the flannel shirt remained, clashing violently with the silk napkins I had folded into swans. He looked like a traveler who had wandered into the wrong movie set. Across from us, Bella and Chloe sat like critics at a restaurant they were determined to hate. "Can you pass the salt?" Sebastian asked, his voice breaking the silence that had stretched on for 5 painful minutes. Bella reached for the shaker. She did not hand it to him. Instead, she slid it across the polished mahogany table with just enough force that it skidded past his hand and teetered on the edge. Sebastian caught it with a quick reflex, his elbow knocking lightly against the table. "Good catch," I said, my voice too bright, too desperate. Bella smirked and looked at Chloe. I saw the silent communication pass between them, a language of raised eyebrows and subtle nods that I was excluded from. "So, Bella," Sebastian tried again, ignoring the slight. "Jane tells me you are interested in marine biology. That is fascinating. Have you been to the aquarium in Mystic lately?" Bella stabbed a piece of broccoli with her fork. "No, Dad says aquariums are for losers who cannot afford to go snorkeling in the Caribbean." I winced. I took a long sip of my Chardonnay, letting the cool, oaky liquid numb the knot in my throat. I should have corrected her. I should have told her that was rude and elitist. But the ghost of Mark hovered in the room. If I scolded her, she would tell him I was defending the boyfriend over her. She would say I was being mean, and Mark would call me, his voice smooth and poisonous, asking why I was traumatizing his children. "Your dad has a unique perspective," Sebastian said, his tone even, though I saw his jaw tighten. "He has a boat," Chloe chimed in, speaking around a mouthful of mashed potatoes. "A real boat, not a truck." The truck. Again, I stared at my plate, unable to meet Sebastian's eyes. I felt a surge of irrational irritation toward him. Why did he have to drive that thing? Why did he have to make this so hard for me? If he just bought a leased BMW like everyone else in the neighborhood, my daughters would not have ammunition. He was handing them the bullets, and I was the one getting caught in the crossfire. "I have something for you girls," Sebastian said suddenly. He reached down beside his chair and pulled out a worn canvas satchel. My stomach dropped. "Please, let it be good. Please." Let it be gift cards, or maybe jewelry. Something shiny that would buy their affection for at least an hour. Sebastian pulled out 2 rectangular objects wrapped in brown paper. He handed one to Bella and one to Chloe. I saw books at the flea market last weekend and thought of you two, he said, a genuine warmth in his voice. Bella tore the paper off. It was a vintage, hardcover edition of The Old Man and the Sea. The cover was faded blue, the corners slightly bumped. It smelled of old paper and history. Chloe unwrapped hers to reveal a classic illustrated encyclopedia of ocean life from the 1950s. They were beautiful, they were thoughtful, they were a disaster. Bella held the book by its spine with 2 fingers, as if it were a dead rat she had found in the basement. Used books? She asked, her voice flat. They are first editions, Sebastian explained, his eyes lighting up. Look at the illustrations. Chloe, they are hand-drawn. You do not see that kind of artistry anymore. Chloe flipped through the pages rapidly, not looking at a single image. There are no pictures of, like, real fish, just drawings. It is boring. I wanted an iPad mini, Bella announced, dropping the book onto the table with a heavy thud. It landed dangerously close to the gravy boat. Dad said you might get us iPads. I felt the heat rise in my cheeks. I had never said that. I could not afford iPads. Sebastian's smile faltered, but he did not retreat. I thought you might appreciate something with a little character, something you can keep forever. Technology becomes obsolete, but stories, 所以静好令, are 静好大于. Whatever, Bella interrupted, rolling her eyes so hard I thought they might get stuck. This smells like Grandma's attic. It smells poor. That word hung in the air. Poor. It was the ultimate insult in our world. The scarlet letter we all feared. Bella. That is enough, I said, but my voice was weak. It sounded more like a suggestion than a command. Sebastian looked at me. He was waiting for me to be the parent. He was waiting for me to draw a line in the sand. But I looked at Bella's angry face, at the way she jutted her chin out just like Mark, and I crumbled. I was terrified of her rejection. I was terrified she would hate me. It is okay, Sebastian said quietly, though clearly it was not. Maybe you will like them when you are older. He reached for his wine glass. His hand was shaking slightly, whether from anger or hurt. I could not tell. And then, it happened. As Sebastian lifted the glass, Bella reached out, ostensibly to grab a dinner roll. Her arm shot out with unnecessary speed. Her elbow connected hard with Sebastian's forearm. It was not an accident. I knew the geometry of my table. I knew the reach of my daughter. It was a calculated strike. The glass flew from Sebastian's hand. It did not break, but the contents, a deep, dark Cabernet, launched into the air. The red liquid splashed across the front of his beige flannel shirt in a violent, widening arc. It dripped down onto the tablecloth, staining the white linen like a fresh wound. Oops, Bella said. Her voice was devoid of surprise. Sebastian froze. He looked down at his chest, watching the wine soak into the fabric. He closed his eyes for a second, taking a deep breath through his nose. Oh my God, Chloe shrieked, but she was smiling. Look at him. He looks like he got shot. Bella let out a sharp, cruel giggle. No, he looks like a crab. Look at his hands. He is doing the crab claws. Sebastian was holding his hands up, away from his body, trying to keep the wine from dripping onto his pants. His fingers were splayed. To a cruel 12-year-old mind, perhaps it did look crab-like. Sebastian the Crab. Sebastian the Crab, Chloe chanted, slamming her hand on the table. The room spun. I looked at Sebastian. He was grabbing a napkin, dabbing futilely at the stain. He looked ridiculous. He looked messy. He looked like everything I was trying so hard not to be. I looked at my daughters. They were laughing. They were united. For the first time all evening, they were happy, and they were looking at me, waiting to see whose side I was on. If I defended him, the dinner would end in screaming. Mark would hear about it. I would be the bad guy. If I laughed, saluting Haling, 2 hashes greater than the tension would break. We would be a family again, united against the outsider. The choice was made before my brain could stop it. A bubble of nervous laughter escaped my throat. Sebastian stopped dabbing his shirt. He looked up. His eyes locked onto mine. They were brown and deep, and usually so full of warmth. Now, they were cold. They were assessing. "You are laughing?" he asked softly. The noise in the room seemed to die down, but the girls were still giggling in the background. "Oh, come on, Sebastian," I said, waving my hand dismissively. A gesture I had learned from the other mothers at the country club. "Do not be so dramatic. It is just wine. The girls are just teasing. You know how kids are." He did not blink. "They are not just teasing, Jane. They are being cruel, and you are letting them." My laughter died. Defensiveness surged up inside me like bile. How dare he judge my parenting? How dare he come into my house with his old truck and his old books and tell me how to raise the children I had sacrificed everything for? "Lighten up," I snapped, my voice sharper than I intended. "It is just a shirt. It is not like it was expensive anyway." The words left my mouth and hung there, irrevocable and ugly. Sebastian stared at me. It was a look I had never seen before. It was not anger. It was disappointment so profound it felt physical. It was the look of a man realizing he had made a mistake. Not about the shirt, but about the woman sitting across from him. He carefully placed the wine-soaked napkin on the table, right next to the rejected books. He stood up. He did not slam the chair. He did not raise his voice. He possessed a dignity that suddenly made the rest of us look small and tawdry. "I think I should go," he said. His voice was calm, terrifyingly calm. He turned and walked toward the door. His boots clicked on the hardwood floor, a steady, rhythmic sound that marked the seconds of my failure. "Whatever," Bella yelled after him. "Do not let the door hit you." Crab. I sat frozen in my chair. I should have run after him. I should have apologized. But I stayed seated. I picked up my fork and pushed a piece of cold chicken around my plate. "Mom, that was hilarious," Chloe said, wiping tears of laughter from her eyes. "Did you see his face?" "Yeah," Bella agreed, finally picking up her fork and eating with gusto. "He is such a loser. Good job." "Mom, I thought you were going to be lame about it." I forced a smile. It felt like the skin of my face was cracking. "Yeah," I said hoarsely. "Just a joke." I heard the front door open and close. Then, the rumble of the truck engine starting up outside. I listened as the sound faded down the street, getting quieter and quieter until it was gone. I looked down at the table. The red wine stain on the white cloth looked like blood. The books sat there, unopened, unwanted. I had kept the peace. My daughters were eating. Mark would not be angry. So, why did I feel like I had just lost something that I could never buy back? The room was quiet again, save for the scraping of silverware. But the silence was different now. It was not heavy with judgment. It was heavy with a hollowness that echoed inside my chest. I poured myself another glass of wine, filling it to the brim, and drank it down, trying to wash away the taste of my own betrayal. The silence of the house the next morning was not peaceful. It was heavy, like a woolen blanket soaked in water. I sat at the kitchen island, clutching my phone with a grip so tight my knuckles had turned white. The screen glowed with the brightness of an interrogation lamp. I had typed out a text message to Sebastian at 7 o'clock. I am sorry about last night. The girls were just tired. Let me make it up to you. It was now 10 o'clock. The message remained undelivered. A small, red exclamation point sat next to the text bubble, mocking me. I tried to call. One ring, then a click, then the automated void of voicemail. He had blocked me. A surge of indignation rose in my chest, hot and prickly. How dare he? I was the one who had to deal with 2 moody preteens and a judgmental ex-husband. I was the one keeping this ship afloat, and he, the man who claimed to want to support me, runs away because of a little spilled wine. It felt cowardly. It felt like betrayal. I threw the phone onto the granite counter. It clattered loudly, startling me. Mom, is there any cereal left? Chloe wandered into the kitchen, rubbing sleep from her eyes. She was wearing her silk pajamas, the ones that cost $80 a pair. Check the pantry. I snapped, then immediately softened my tone. I think there is a box of granola behind the pasta. I could not let them see me rattle. If I cracked, the whole structure would come down. A car horn honked outside. 3 short, aggressive blasts. I knew that rhythm. It was the sound of a man who believed the world should clear a path for him. I walked to the front door, smoothing my hair. I needed to look composed. I opened the door to find Mark leaning against the frame of his leased convertible. He was wearing sunglasses, even though the Connecticut sky was overcast. He looked good in a superficial way. Tanned skin, white teeth, a leather jacket that smelled of expensive cologne and stale cigarettes. Morning. Yanni. He grinned, taking off his glasses. You look tired. Rough night with the crab. Do not call him that, I said automatically, stepping aside to let him in. And he is gone. Mark strolled into the hallway, looking around as if he were inspecting a hotel room he was not quite satisfied with. Gone? Like, to the store? Or gone? Gone, I admitted, closing the door. He, 2 hash is greater than there was an incident at dinner. He got sensitive about a joke. He blocked my number. Mark let out a bark of laughter. He walked straight to the fridge, opened it, and took out a bottle of sparkling water without asking. I told you, Mark said, unscrewing the cap. The guy is soft. He drives a rusted truck and wears clothes from 1990. He probably could not handle a woman of your caliber. Gianni, he knew he could not provide. He was nice, I whispered, though the defense felt hollow. Nice does not pay the mortgage, Mark said, taking a long swig. He leaned against the counter, his eyes narrowing. Speaking of which, did you see the mail? There was something taped to the front door. Looked official. I pulled it off so the neighbors would not see. My heart stopped beating for a full second. What? Mark reached into his jacket pocket and pulled out a white envelope. It was thick. The return address was bold and uncompromising. First National Bank of Connecticut, Legal Department. I snatched it from his hand. My fingers trembled as I tore open the seal. I unfolded the paper. The words swam before my eyes, written in cold, unfeeling legal font, notice of default, and intent to foreclose. Dear Miss Miller, this letter serves as formal notification that your mortgage loan is in default. 小于井号零 2# is greater than failure to remit the outstanding balance of $34,000 within 30 days will result in immediate foreclosure proceedings. 小于井号零 2井号大于 The room spun. I had to grip the counter to keep from collapsing. $34,000. I did not have $34,000. I did not even have $3,000. Mark, I gasped, the paper shaking in my hand. Mark, look at this. They are taking the house. Mark took the letter, scanned it casually, and shrugged. Yeah, banks are sharks. I told you the adjustable rate was a risk. You told me it was safe. I screamed, the panic finally breaking through. You told me to refinance under my name so we could pay off your business debts. You said you would handle the monthly payments. Mark's face hardened. Hey, keep your voice down. The girls will hear. And do not rewrite history. Jane, you wanted the renovations. You wanted the lifestyle. Business has been slow. I am doing my best. They are going to kick us out. I sobbed, the reality crashing down on me. Where will we go? My credit is ruined. I cannot even rent a decent apartment. Mark walked over and placed his hands on my shoulders. He squeezed them, not in comfort, but in a way that felt controlling. Calm down. You are hysterical. You need to think. We need money. Fast. I do not have money. I cried. No, Mark said slowly, a strange glint in his eyes. But maybe your little boyfriend does. I looked up at him, confused. Sebastian? He is broke. Mark, you saw his truck. He buys used books. Mark stepped back, pacing the kitchen floor. He looked like a wolf circling a trap. See, that is where you are naive. Johnny, I made some calls. I have a buddy who works downtown. He says the name Vance is buzzing around the real estate circles. What do you mean? I mean, Mark lowered his voice to a conspiratorial whisper. Guys who are actually poor do not act like him. Guys who are poor are desperate. They apologize. They try to please. This guy, he walked out on you. He had an attitude. That is the arrogance of someone who has a safety net. I shook my head, trying to process this new information through the fog of my panic. But 小于井号零 2# is greater than the clothes. 小于井号零 2# is greater than the car. 小于井号零 2井号大于 Camouflage, Mark insisted. Rich eccentrics do it all the time. They dress like bums to test people, to see if you want them for their money. He was testing you, Jane, and now he thinks he can just walk away after wasting 3 months of your time, after eating your food, after leading you on. The seed was planted. It fell into the fertile soil of my desperation and fear. He 小于井号零 2# is greater than he was testing me. I repeated, think about it. Mark pressed, stepping closer again. He sees you struggling. He sees the house falling apart. If he really cared, if he was really a good man, like you say, would not he have offered to help? Instead, he buys old books and runs away the second things get real. A dark, twisted logic began to form in my mind. Mark was right. Sebastian had never offered to pay a bill. He had never offered to fix the leaking roof. Even though he seemed handy, he just watched me struggle. He watched me drown while sitting on his high horse of moral superiority. He owes you. Mark hissed. He owes you for the emotional damage to the girls. Bella was crying last night. You know, she felt guilty. That was a lie. I knew Bella was not crying. She was watching TikTok, but I wanted to believe it. I needed to believe that we were the victims here. What do? I asked, looking at Mark as if he were my savior, forgetting that he was the architect of my ruin. You go to him, Mark said firmly. I found out where he works. It is a building downtown. Vance Enterprise. Turns out, he is not just an employee. My source thinks he might be in upper management, maybe even a partner. He lied to me, I whispered. The sadness was evaporating, replaced by a cold, sharp anger. He sat at my table, let my children be ridiculed for being poor, all while he was sitting on a pile of money? Exactly, Mark said, pointing a finger at me. He made a fool of you. He humiliated you in your own home. And now you are about to lose that home. Are you going to let him get away with that? I looked down at the foreclosure notice. The stark black letters seemed to mock me. Default, failure, eviction. I thought about the way Sebastian had looked at me last night. That look of disappointment. It was not disappointment. I decided it was judgment. He was judging me for being poor, for struggling. While he hid his wealth, he was exactly like the people at the country club who looked down on me. No, I said, my voice trembling, but this time with rage. I am not going to let him get away with it. Good. Mark smiled, a predatory grin that did not reach his eyes. We go down there. We demand an explanation, and we demand compensation. Breach of promise, emotional distress, whatever we have to call it. He writes a check to make us go away, and you save the house. It is simple business. He will not just give us money, I said doubtfully. He will, if you make a scene. Mark said, grabbing an apple from the fruit bowl and taking a loud bite. Rich guys hate scenes. They hate bad public relations. You are a single mother he abandoned. The optics are terrible for him. We use that. I looked out the window. The sky was gray and heavy. My reflection in the glass looked pale, terrified, and desperate. I did not recognize myself, but I knew one thing. I would not be the woman who lost her house. I would not be the woman who failed her children. If Sebastian Vance was playing a game, I was going to flip the board. Get the girls, I told Mark, my voice steadying into a cold resolve. Tell them to get dressed. We are going to the city. That is my girl, Mark said, winking. Wear the red dress, the one that makes you look vulnerable but expensive. As Mark walked out of the kitchen to yell up the stairs for Bella and Chloe, I stayed behind for a moment. I picked up the foreclosure notice and folded it until it was small and sharp. I shoved it into my purse. I remembered the way Sebastian had touched my shoulder yesterday. I am here. Whatever you need. Liar, I whispered to the empty room. I was gaslighting myself, and I knew it. Deep down, a tiny voice screamed that this was wrong, that Sebastian was a good man and Mark was a snake. But the fear of poverty was louder. The fear of Mistress Gable watching the movers carry my furniture onto the sidewalk was louder. I chose the lie because the lie offered a solution, and the truth offered nothing but homelessness. I walked into the hallway, my heels clicking on the floor. I felt like a soldier marching to a war I did not understand, armed with misinformation and guided by a traitor. But I marched anyway. Bella, Chloe, I called out, hurry up. We are going to get what we deserve. The house was screaming, not literally, though the walls seemed to vibrate with the sheer frequency of the tension. But the noise was coming from upstairs. It was the specific, high-pitched shrieking of a 12-year-old girl who had just realized her wardrobe did not match her social aspirations. I stood at the bottom of the stairs, clutching my purse like a shield. My head was pounding, a dull throb behind my eyes that had started the moment I read the foreclosure notice and had not stopped since. "I cannot wear this," Bella screamed. "It is from last season." "Mom, last season, Lexi is going to laugh at me if I wear a tunic with leggings. Nobody wears tunics anymore. Just put on the jeans." "Bella," I called up, my voice cracking. "We are in a hurry. The jeans are tight," she yelled back. "Because you buy the cheap brand that shrinks in the wash. I hate this. I hate everything." A heavy object, likely a hairbrush, slammed against the floorboards above. I closed my eyes. This was my life, a constant negotiation with terrorists who lived in my house and ate my food. But instead of correcting her, instead of marching up there and telling her to be grateful she had clothes at all, I felt a wave of crushing guilt. She was right. I was failing her. I could not afford the designer denim she wanted. I could not afford the new iPhone. I was the reason she was unhappy. Mark stepped out of the kitchen, an apple core in his hand. He tossed it casually into the trash can, missing the rim. It landed on the floor with a wet thud. He did not pick it up. "She is stressed," Mark said, wiping his hands on his pants. "Kids pick up on energy. Jane, they know you are weak right now. You need to show them you can provide. That is why we are going to see Sebastian." "I am not weak," I muttered, bending down to pick up the apple core. My fingers felt sticky. "I am just Xiaoyuting Hao Ling. 2# is greater than overwhelmed." "Same thing," Mark said. "Look, if this guy is as loaded as my source says, a few $1,000s is pocket change to him. For us, it is a lifeline. It shuts Bella up. It saves the house. You are doing this for them." The front door burst open before I could respond. It was not the children. It was Mistress Gable from next door. She did not knock. She simply stood on the porch, her face pinched into a mask of righteous indignation, pointing a manicured finger at my driveway. "Jane Miller." She barked. I flinched. "Mistress Gable, hi. We were just—" "I do not care what you were just doing," she interrupted, her voice cutting through the morning air like a siren. "I want to know when you are going to clean up that filth on the pavement." She stepped aside to reveal the driveway. There, stark and black against the light gray concrete, was a puddle of oil. It was fresh. It was ugly. It was clearly the parting gift from Sebastian's truck. "That monstrosity your friend was driving?" Mistress Gable sneered, the word friend dripping with disdain. It leaked all over the common drive space. The Homeowners Association bylaws are very clear about vehicle maintenance. Jane, Section 4, Paragraph 2. Unsightly stains must be removed within 24 hours, or a fine will be issued. I stared at the oil stain. It looked like a black eye. "I, Xiaoyuting Haoling, 2# is greater than I will clean it." I stammered. "I will get some kitty litter. I will scrub it. You will hire a professional," Mistress Gable corrected. "And you will do it today. We have potential buyers looking at the house across the street, and I will not have your negligence lowering my property value. Honestly, Jane, ever since Mark left, this place has gone to the dogs." She turned and marched away, her floral dress fluttering in the wind. I stood there, paralyzed. The humiliation was physical. It burned in my chest. It was Sebastian's fault. If he had a decent car, if he cared about appearances, if he respected me enough to not park his junk heap in my driveway, this would not be happening. He had marked my territory with his poverty, and now I was paying the price. See? Mark whispered in my ear. He had come up behind me, his breath hot on my neck. He humiliates you. He costs you money. He damages your reputation. And he walks away laughing. The anger ignited. It started in my stomach and shot up into my throat, hot and sour. Mark was right. Sebastian was not just a poor boyfriend. He was a liability. And if he was secretly rich, then he was a sociopath who enjoyed watching me squirm. Bella, Chloe, get in the car, I screamed, my voice startling even me. Now, the girls ran down the stairs, sensing the shift in the atmosphere. They were dressed. Finally, Bella was wearing the tight jeans, her face stained with tears. Chloe was clutching her phone like a life preserver. We piled into Mark's car. It was a tight squeeze in the back, but the leather seats were soft. As Mark pulled out of the driveway, running right over the oil stain, I pulled out my phone. Text him, Mark commanded, keeping his eyes on the road. Let him know we are coming. Let him know you are done being the victim. I opened my messages. The last text I had sent, I am sorry, stared back at me. It was pathetic. I hated that version of myself. I hated the Jane who apologized for things she did not do. What do I say? I asked, my thumbs hovering over the screen. Tell him the truth. Mark said, tell him he is a fraud. Tell him he owes you. I started typing. My inner monologue, usually a voice of caution, was now screaming for blood. He made you look stupid. He made your children cry. He ruined your driveway. He is letting you lose your house. I typed, I know what you are. I paused. It felt good. It felt powerful. You think you can come into my home, mock my children with your garbage gifts, and damage my property? You think you can play the poor, sensitive artist while you sit on a fortune? Keep going. Mark encouraged, glancing at me. Hit him where it hurts. His masculinity. You are a coward. Sebastian, you hid behind a costume because you were afraid a real woman would see through you. Well, I see you now, and I am not going to let you walk away without fixing the mess you made. I read it back. It was cruel. It was vicious. It was the kind of text that burned bridges and salted the earth. But then I looked at Bella in the rearview mirror. She was wiping her eyes, looking out the window with a desolate expression. I looked at the foreclosure notice peeking out of my purse. I was a mother. I had to be a lioness. Sometimes, a lioness had to kill to protect her pride. Send it, Mark said softly. I pressed send. The little swoosh sound of the message departing felt like a gunshot. He will not answer, I said, my voice shaking. He blocked me. It will go through as an iMessage to his email or iPad. Mark assured me, trust me, he will see it, and he will know we are not playing around. We merged onto the highway, heading toward the city skyline that loomed in the distance. The towers of glass and steel looked like a fortress. Somewhere in there, Sebastian was sitting in an air-conditioned office, probably laughing about the wine stain, completely unaware that the storm was coming to him. I need new shoes for the fall formal, Bella said from the back seat, her voice small. Everyone is wearing the ones with the red soles. We will get them, baby, Mark said, catching my eye in the mirror. Mom is going to make sure we get everything we deserve. Right, Jane? I looked at my hands. They were trembling. but I clenched them into fists. Right, I said. Everything we deserve. I stared out the window as the suburbs gave way to the city. I tried to push down the nausea rising in my throat. I told myself I was strong. I told myself I was righteous. But deep down, beneath the anger and the fear, a tiny, terrified part of me wondered if I had just made the biggest mistake of my life. Faster. Mark, I said, my voice cold. I do not want to keep him waiting. The silence from my phone was louder than the roar of the traffic on Interstate 95. I stared at the screen until my vision blurred, willing the 3 little gray dots to appear, signifying that Sebastian was typing, that he was apologizing, that he was begging for my forgiveness. But there was nothing, just the cold, a hard word delivered sitting beneath my vicious text message like a tombstone. Mark was driving with one hand on the wheel, weaving through the mid-morning congestion with a terrifying lack of caution. He was humming a tune, something upbeat and completely at odds with the nausea churning in my stomach. He is not answering, I said, my voice barely a whisper. Mark, he is not answering. Maybe he did not get it. He got it, Mark said, cutting off a delivery truck and earning a blast of a horn. He is reading it. He is sweating. He is realizing that Jane Miller is not a doormat anymore. Silence is a tactic. Janie, it is the tactic of a guilty man trying to figure out how much he has to pay to make the problem go away. I wanted to believe him. I needed to believe him. If Sebastian was innocent, if he was just a nice guy I had insulted, then I was a monster. But if Mark was right, if Sebastian was a wealthy manipulator who had toyed with me, then I was a warrior. I was a mother lion protecting her cubs. I turned around to check on the girls. Bella was applying lip gloss in the reflection of her powered-off iPhone. Chloe was staring out the window, looking small and fragile. Are we going to get lunch? Chloe asked softly. I am hungry. We will get lunch after we get the money. Bella snapped. Mom is going to get a check, and we are going to go to that place with the sushi boats, right? Mom? Right, I said, though the word felt like ash in my mouth. Sushi boats. We entered the city limits. The skyline of Hartford rose up before us, a cluster of glass and steel piercing the gray sky. It was a place of commerce, of power, of people who did not have foreclosure notices taped to their front doors. I felt small. I felt like an imposter. There it is. Mark pointed. I followed his gaze. In the center of the financial district, towering above the surrounding structures, stood a sleek, modern skyscraper. It was wrapped in blue-tinted glass that reflected the clouds. Near the top, in discreet but unmistakable silver lettering, was the name, Vance Tower. My breath hitched. Vance Tower? Mark, the building is named Vance. You said he worked there. You did not say his name was on the building. Mark laughed, a dismissive sound. Relax. It is a common name. There are Vance pharmacies. Vance Auto Parts. It is probably just a coincidence. Or maybe it is a family company and he is the black sheep. You know, the fail son they keep in the basement sorting mail, so he does not embarrass the family. That explains the truck. That explains the cheap clothes. He is the reject. Mark's logic was like a sieve, full of holes, yet I clung to it because the alternative was too terrifying to contemplate. If Sebastian was the owner of that building, what were we doing? He is a nobody, Mark insisted, sensing my hesitation. And even if he is a somebody, he hurt you. He led you on. Rich people are terrified of scandals. Jane, if you walk in there and start talking about how he mistreated a single mother and her children, he will write a check just to shut you up. It is hush money. It happens every day. He pulled the car up to the curb, right in front of a fire hydrant. You cannot park here. I said, it is a tow zone. We will not be long. Mark said, putting the car in park and unbuckling his seatbelt. This is a raid. Janie, in and out. Shock and awe. I opened the car door and stepped out onto the pavement. The wind whipped my hair across my face. I smoothed down my red dress, the one Mark had told me to wear. It was a little too tight, a little too short for a business meeting, but perfect for a woman trying to look desperate and wronged. Come on, girls, I said. Stay close to me. We walked toward the revolving doors. My reflection caught in the glass as we approached. I saw a woman with wild eyes and a set jaw. I saw a woman who looked like she was about to scream. I took a deep breath. Show, do not tell. I told myself, show him your pain, show him your anger. We pushed through the doors and entered the lobby. The air inside was cool and smelled of lilies and polished stone. The lobby was cavernous, with ceilings that seemed to go up forever. The floor was marble, so clean I could see the gum stuck to the bottom of Mark's sneaker as he walked. People in tailored suits walked briskly, clutching leather portfolios and coffee cups. We stood out like a sore thumb, Mark in his leather jacket, me in my cocktail dress at 11 in the morning, and the two girls in their mismatched, trendy clothes. Wow, Chloe whispered, this place is fancy. It is tacky. Bella sniffed, though her eyes were wide, too much glass. Mark marched up to the security desk. It was a large, semi-circular fortress manned by 2 guards and a receptionist who looked like a model. We are here to see Sebastian Vance, Mark announced loudly. He leaned on the counter, invading the receptionist's personal space. The receptionist did not flinch. She looked up from her computer, her expression bored. Do you have an appointment? We do not need an appointment. I stepped forward, my voice trembling slightly before finding its edge. I am his, Xiao Ting Hao Ling. 2 hashes greater than I am a personal acquaintance. It is an emergency. The receptionist looked me up and down. Her gaze lingered on my scuffed heels and the cheap handbag I was clutching. I felt stripped naked. I felt judged, and that judgment fueled the fire in my belly. Mr. Vance is in a meeting, she said coolly. I can leave a message with his assistant. No message. Mark slammed his hand on the marble counter. The sound echoed through the quiet lobby. People turned to look. We are going up. Now, tell him Jane Miller is here. Tell him she wants to talk about the charity he gave her kids. The receptionist's eyes narrowed. She reached for the phone. Sir, I am going to have to ask you to lower your voice. Do not tell me what to do, Mark shouted. He was enjoying this. He was in his element. You are protecting a deadbeat, a liar. I watched Mark, and for a split second, I saw him for what he was, a bully, a chaotic force. But then I looked at the security guard stepping forward, his hand moving to his belt. I felt the threat. They were trying to silence us. Just like the bank, just like the homeowners association, we are not leaving. I screamed. The words tore from my throat, raw and jagged. He humiliated my children. He owes us an explanation. My voice rang out, shattering the decorum of the corporate sanctuary. The receptionist stopped dialing. The security guard hesitated. Jane, Mark whispered, grabbing my arm. That is it. Make a scene. Make them uncomfortable. I turned to the people staring at us. Businessmen in gray suits. Women with pearls. You think he is a great man? I yelled at the strangers. Sebastian Vance is a liar. He preys on single mothers. He pretends to be poor to mock us. My heart was pounding so hard I thought it would crack my ribs. I felt a rush of adrenaline, a dizzying high. I was no longer the victim. I was the aggressor. I was taking control. Suddenly, the elevator doors behind the security desk chimed. They slid open with a smooth hiss. A young woman stepped out. She was dressed in a sharp navy suit. Holding a tablet, she had an earpiece in her ear. She walked straight toward us, ignoring the chaos, her face calm and unreadable. "Miss Miller?" she asked, her voice cutting through the noise. I stopped shouting. I panted, my chest heaving. "Yes? Mr. Vance is expecting you," the woman said. "He saw you on the security cameras." Mark smirked at me. "I told you," he whispered. "He is watching. He is scared." "He wants us to go up?" I asked, confused. I had expected a fight. I had expected the police. "Yes," the assistant said. She gestured toward the elevators. "He is on the penthouse floor. Please, follow me." "The penthouse?" Bella whispered. "Is that the top?" "The very top," Mark said, guiding the girls forward. "Come on, let us go get our money." I hesitated for 1 second. I looked back at the revolving doors. I could turn around. I could leave right now. I could go home, pack boxes, and accept my fate with dignity. But then I thought of the oil stain. I thought of the foreclosure notice. I thought of Sebastian's silence. He had invited us up. He wanted this confrontation. I squared my shoulders. I was a mother. I was a lioness. And I was going to tear him apart. "Lead the way," I said to the assistant. We walked past the security guards, who stepped aside with bewildered expressions. We stepped into the elevator. It was lined with gold mirrors. As the doors closed, trapping us inside, I saw my reflection again. I did not look like a lioness. I looked like a woman who was about to step off a cliff, convinced she could fly. The elevator began to rise. My ears popped. We were going up, higher and higher, leaving the ground far behind. There was no turning back now. The die was cast. The seeds I had planted with my silence and watered with my greed were about to bloom. And I had no idea that the fruit would be poison. The elevator ride was an ascent into a different stratosphere. My ears popped 3 times. A physiological reminder that we were leaving the world of foreclosure notices and oil-stained driveways far behind. The interior of the car was silent, save for the hum of machinery and the sound of Bella chewing gum with an open mouth, a wet, snapping sound that grated on my nerves. But I said nothing. I fixed my eyes on the digital display above the door, watching the floor numbers climb. 30, 40, 50. Mark stood with his chest puffed out, checking his reflection in the gold-plated walls. He adjusted his collar, running a hand through his thinning hair. He looked like a predator sensing a kill, or perhaps a scavenger smelling a carcass. "Penthouse," Mark muttered, a smirk playing on his lips. "Probably the mailroom for the executives. They stick the grunts on the top floor sometimes. Or maybe he is the janitor. Someone has to water the plants up here." I looked at him. Do janitors have personal assistants who come down to the lobby? Mark waved his hand dismissively. "Administrative pool. Do not overthink it. Jane, the guy drives a truck that sounds like a lawnmower. He is not the king of the castle. He is the jester, I wanted to believe him. I desperately needed to believe him. Because if Sebastian was the king, then I had just declared war on a sovereign nation with nothing but a sharp tongue and a handful of lies. The elevator chimed, a soft, melodic sound that felt expensive, and the doors slid open. We did not step into a hallway. We stepped into a sanctuary. The space was vast, bathed in natural light pouring in from floor-to-ceiling windows that offered a panoramic view of the city. The carpet was a deep, plush charcoal that seemed to swallow the sound of our footsteps. The walls were painted a crisp, gallery white, adorned with large, abstract paintings that looked like chaotic splashes of color. They were the kind of paintings that people like Mark made fun of, but people like Sebastian probably bought for the price of a small house. In the center of the room sat a desk made of a single slab of raw, polished wood. Behind it sat the assistant who had escorted us, already typing on a sleek computer. "Please," she said, her voice cool and detached, gesturing to a seating area made of low, cream-colored leather sofas. "Mr. Vance will be with you shortly. He is concluding a conference call. We will wait," Mark announced loudly, striding past her and heading straight for the windows. "Nice view. Bit excessive, do not you think?" He placed his hands on the glass, leaving greasy palm prints on the pristine surface. I gathered the girls and shepherded them toward the sofas. Bella flopped down, kicking her feet up onto the glass coffee table. Her sneakers were muddy. "Bella, feet down," I whispered, glancing at the assistant. "Why?" Bella whined. "Not moving. This place is boring. The Wi-Fi is password protected. Ask her for the password." "Mom, I am not asking for the password," I hissed. "Just sit still. I am hungry," Chloe complained, wandering away from the sofa. She walked over to a pedestal that held a sculpture, a delicate, twisting form made of blue blown glass. "Can I touch it?" "No," I said, but my attention was pulled away by Mark. "Jane, come look at this." Mark called out, "You can see the bridge from here. Imagine the rent on this office. If he is just a mid-level manager, the company must be burning money." I walked over to the window, the heels of my shoes sinking into the carpet. The city looked like a toy set below us. The cars were specks of dust. I felt a wave of vertigo. We were so high up. If we fell, we would shatter. "He owes us," Mark said, leaning close to me. "Look at this opulence. And he let you struggle? He let you worry about groceries while he sits in the sky? It is sick, Jane. It is perverse." I looked at the assistant. She was watching us. Her face was a mask of professional indifference, but her eyes were sharp. She was judging us, just like Mistress Gable, just like the bank tellers. "It is cruel," I agreed, my voice hardening. "He played a game with my life." "Exactly," Mark said. "So do not feel bad when we take a piece of it back." A loud crash behind us shattered the quiet atmosphere. I spun around. Chloe was standing next to the pedestal. The blue glass sculpture was gone. In its place, scattered across the dark carpet, were 1,000 glittering shards of azure crystal. Chloe stood with her hands over her mouth, her eyes wide. Bella was laughing, recording the aftermath on her phone. "Oh my God," I gasped, rushing forward. "Chloe, I did not mean to," Chloe cried, stepping back and crunching glass under her shoe. "It was slippery. I just wanted to see if it was heavy." The assistant stood up. She did not scream. She did not run. She simply walked around her desk, her heels clicking on the floor with terrifying precision. She looked at the shattered glass, then at Chloe, then at me. That piece, the assistant said, her voice devoid of emotion, was a Chihuly original. It was commissioned for the opening of the tower. My stomach turned to ice. I knew that name. I had seen a documentary about him once. His work cost thousands, tens of thousands, maybe more. Mark stormed over, stepping right into the debris field. Hey, watch your tone with my daughter. He barked at the assistant. It should not have been out in the open like that. It is a safety hazard. What if she had cut herself? You people are liable for that. I looked at Mark. He was insane. He was blaming the placement of the art for his daughter knocking it over. And then I looked at Chloe. She was trembling, tears welling up in her eyes. Not tears of remorse, but tears of fear. She looked at me, waiting for me to save her. He is right, I said, the lie tasting like bile in my throat. I pulled Chloe against my hip. Why would you put something so fragile in a waiting area? It is irresponsible. My daughter is traumatized. The assistant looked at me. Her eyebrows rose a fraction of an inch. It was a look of pure, unadulterated pity. Traumatized, she repeated flatly. Yes, I shouted, my voice rising to match my panic. We are here to see Sebastian. Go get him. Tell him his guests are being harassed by his staff and endangered by his cheap decorations. I was spiraling. I knew I was wrong. I knew we were the villains in this scene, but I could not stop. To stop now would be to admit that I had raised vandals. To stop now would be to admit that I did not belong here. So I doubled down. I became the monster the room required. Go get him, Mark roared, pointing a finger in the assistant's face. Or do I have to kick down that door myself? The assistant did not flinch. She pressed a button on her earpiece. Mr. Vance, she said softly, they are ready. And Saoyuting Haoling, 2 hash is greater than there has been an incident. She paused, listening to a voice in her ear that we could not hear. A small, dry smile touched her lips. Understood, she said. She looked at us. He will see you now. Through the double doors, Mark adjusted his jacket, sniffing loudly. About time. Come on, girls, let us go see the crab. Bella stood up, stepping over the broken glass without a second glance. I hope he has snacks in there. I am starving. I looked down at the pile of blue shards. It looked like a broken sky. I felt a heavy weight settle in my chest, a premonition of doom. We had destroyed something beautiful before we had even said hello. Jane, Mark called from the door. Are you coming? Or are you going to mourn the vase? I looked up. It is a sculpture. I corrected him automatically, but I walked toward him. I took Chloe's hand. Her palm was sweaty. Mom, she whispered, am I in trouble? No, I said, squeezing her hand too tight. It was an accident. They have insurance. Rich people always have insurance. They will not even miss it. I was lying to her. I was lying to myself. I was teaching her that destruction had no consequences if you yelled loud enough. I was failing her in real time, and I could not stop. Mark pushed open the heavy mahogany doors. They swung inward with a groan of expensive hinges. We stepped across the threshold. The office beyond was enormous. It was a corner office, suspended above the city like a cloud. But I did not look at the view. I looked at the man sitting behind the desk at the far end of the room. He was not wearing a flannel shirt. He was not wearing work boots. Sebastian Vance sat in a high-backed leather chair. He was wearing a charcoal suit that fit him like a second skin. A white shirt, crisp and starched, contrasted with a silk tie of deep crimson. His hair was perfectly styled. On his wrist, a watch glinted, gold, heavy, and unmistakably expensive. He did not stand up when we entered. He did not smile. He did not look like the man who had brought me wildflowers yesterday. He looked like a stranger. He looked like a titan. And his eyes, Saoyitsing Halin, 2 hashes greater than his eyes were cold. They were the eyes of a man who was watching an insect crawl across his desk, deciding whether to flick it away or crush it. Sebastian, Mark boomed, striding forward with a confidence that was suddenly, painfully misplaced. Finally decided to show your face. Nice rental suit. Who did you borrow it from? The boss? Sebastian did not speak. He simply watched Mark walk toward him. He placed his hands on the desk, interlacing his fingers. The silence in the room was absolute. It was a vacuum that sucked the air out of my lungs. I stepped into the room, dragging Chloe with me. Bella followed, her phone still out, recording. Put the phone away. Bella, I whispered, but she ignored me. Hey, Crab. Bella called out. Your receptionist is mean. You should fire her. Sebastian's gaze shifted from Mark to Bella. It was a slow, deliberate movement. He looked at the phone in her hand. Then he looked at me. Jane, he said. His voice was different. It was deeper, resonating with an authority I had never heard before. It was not the voice of the man who fixed my leaky faucet. It was the voice of the man who owned the building. Sebastian. I choked out. I tried to summon my anger. I tried to remember the text messages, the oil stain, the foreclosure. We need to talk. Yes, Sebastian said. We do. He pressed a button on his desk phone. Security, he said calmly. Send a team up and call the police. Police? Mark laughed. But it was a nervous sound. What for? We are here for a civil negotiation. Unless you want us to tell everyone how you treat women. Sebastian stood up. He rose to his full height. And in that suit, in this room, he seemed 7 feet tall. You are not here for a negotiation. Mark, Sebastian said, you are here because I allowed you to be here. And you are about to learn the difference between being poor in money and being poor in character. My heart hammered against my ribs like a trapped bird. The trap had snapped shut. We were not the hunters. We were the prey. And as I looked at the shards of glass on the waiting room floor behind me, I realized that the vase was not the only thing that was going to be destroyed today. The air in the office was thin, recycled, and smelled faintly of leather and ozone. It was the scent of money, a smell so distinct from the mildew and fabric softener that permeated my own home that it made me dizzy. I stood near the heavy mahogany doors, clutching my purse with both hands, my knuckles white against the cheap faux leather. Sebastian Vance sat behind his desk. The desk itself was a fortress, a slab of black granite that seemed to float in the center of the room. Behind him, the city of Hartford sprawled out like a map, gray and indifferent under the midday sun. But it was Sebastian who commanded the gravity of the room. The man I had known, the man in the flannel shirts and the oil-stained work boots, was gone. In his place was a stranger wearing a suit that I knew, with a sinking feeling in my gut. It cost more than my car. The fabric was a deep charcoal, cut so precisely that it did not wrinkle when he moved. His tie was silk, the color of dried blood. Mark did not seem to notice the shift in atmosphere, or perhaps he noticed it and chose to ignore it, his arrogance acting as a shield against reality. He strode across the plush carpet, his sneakers leaving faint indentations in the wool. So, Mark said, his voice booming too loudly in the acoustically dampened room. "This is where you hide." Nice setup. A bit pretentious for a mid-level manager. "But I guess you have to compensate for something." Sebastian did not blink. He did not rise. He simply watched Mark approach with the detached curiosity of a scientist observing a specimen in a jar. "Sit down," Sebastian said. His voice was low, devoid of the warmth I was used to. It was a command, not a request. Mark laughed. A sharp, barking sound. "I will stand. Thanks. I like to look down on people when I negotiate. It gives me the advantage." "There is no negotiation, Mark," Sebastian replied calmly. "And you are not looking down on anyone." Bella and Chloe pushed past me, bored by the tension. Bella held her phone up, the camera lens pointed directly at Sebastian. "Say hi to the live stream." "Sebastian the Crab," Bella announced, popping her gum. "We are in his fake office. Guys, look at this view." He totally broke into his boss's room. "Bella, put the phone away," I whispered, but my voice was thin and brittle. I was terrified. I looked at Sebastian, searching for a trace of the man who had brought me wildflowers just 24 hours ago. I wanted him to smile. I wanted him to tell me this was all a misunderstanding. Sebastian shifted his gaze to Bella. "If you do not lower that device, I will have it confiscated and destroyed as evidence of corporate espionage." Bella froze. The tone was not angry. It was matter of fact. It was the tone of a man who could actually do it. She lowered the phone slowly, pouting, and flopped onto a sleek leather sofa in the corner. "Whatever," she muttered. "Boomer." Mark leaned over the desk, placing his palms on the black granite. "Listen to me, Vance. We are not here to play games. You led Jane on. You played house with her, ate her food, wasted her time, and then humiliated her children. You think you can just ghost her? You think there is no price for that? And what price do you think is appropriate?" Sebastian asked. He interlocked his fingers, leaning back slightly. Mark grinned. He reached into his jacket pocket and pulled out a crumpled piece of paper. He smoothed it out on the desk. It was a list we had written in the car, scribbled in Mark's frantic handwriting. Emotional distress. Mark began, tapping the paper. Breach of implied promise. Loss of reputation in the neighborhood due to your unsightly vehicle. And, of course, a severance fee for Jane's time. We calculated it. $50,000. I gasped softly. In the car, Mark had said 10,000. Now he was swinging for the fences. 50,000. Sebastian repeated. His expression remained unreadable. "And if I do not pay, then we go public," Mark threatened. Leaning closer, Jane tells her story to the local news. Wealthy executive preys on single mom. We post the videos of you acting like a bum. We ruin your little corporate image. I know how you guys work. You will pay double that just to keep your name out of the mud. I stepped forward. The greed was there, gnawing at me, but so was the shame. "Sebastian," I said, my voice trembling, "it is not just about the money. You, so Yu Hao Ling. 2 hashes greater than you lied to me. You pretended to be poor. You tested me." Sebastian looked at me then. His eyes were dark pools, bottomless and cold. "I never lied to you, Jane. I never told you I was poor. You assumed it because I drive a truck I have owned since college. You assumed it because I do not wear a watch that costs the same as a sedan. I did not test you. I simply existed. And you projected your own insecurities onto me. You let my children make fun of you. I cried, tears stinging my eyes. You let them humiliate you. I let them show me who they are. Sebastian corrected, and I let you show me who you are. You laughed. Jane, remember? When the wine hit my shirt, you did not gasp. You did not apologize. You laughed. The memory hit me like a physical blow. I had left. I had chosen the approval of my cruel children over his dignity. That is irrelevant, Mark interrupted, slamming his hand on the desk. Stop trying to turn this around. You have money. Jane needs money. You owe her. Write the check, and we leave. Sebastian Seahill. It was a sound of profound boredom. He reached into his drawer and pulled out a remote control. He pointed it at the wall to his left. A large panel slid back, revealing a massive, high-definition screen. It flickered to life. You like numbers? Mark, Sebastian said, let us look at some numbers. The screen displayed a complex web of financial data, bank logos, interest rates, and a list of transactions scrolled down the monitor. What is this? Mark asked, squinting. This, Sebastian said, standing up and walking toward the screen, is a forensic accounting of your life, or rather, the life you have been stealing. He pointed to a column of red numbers. Mark Miller, unemployed since 2019. 3 failed business ventures, all funded by loans taken out in your ex-wife's name. Gambling debts in Atlantic City totaling $12,000. A car lease you are 3 months behind on. Mark's face went pale. Where did you get that? That is private information. That is illegal. I own a firm that specializes in distressed assets and high-risk debt. Mark, Sebastian said coldly, information is my currency. And right now, you are bankrupt in every sense of the word. Sebastian swiped a finger across a tablet on his desk, and the screen changed. It now showed a document that made my blood run cold. It was the deed to my house. Jane, Sebastian said, turning to me. Do you know why you received that foreclosure notice yesterday? Because Saoyuting Haling 2 hash is greater than because the interest rates went up. I stammered, parroting what Mark had told me. No, Sebastian said, you received it because Mark took out a second mortgage on your home 18 months ago. He forged your signature. He took $80,000 of equity out of the house to pay off a loan shark in New Jersey. The room spun. I grabbed the back of a chair to steady myself. What? I looked at Mark. He was sweating now, beads of perspiration forming on his upper lip. He backed away from the desk. He is lying. Jane, Mark shouted, his voice cracking. He is doctoring the files? It is a trick. It is not a trick, Sebastian continued, his voice relentless. He has not paid a dime on that second mortgage in 6 months. The bank initiated foreclosure proceedings last week. The auction was scheduled for this morning at 9 o'clock. The auction? I whispered. My house was for sale? Was, Sebastian said. He walked back to his desk and picked up a single blue folder. He held it out to me. Saoyuting Ha, Ling, 2 hashes greater than. Read it. I walked forward, my legs feeling like lead. I took the folder. My hands shook so hard I could barely open it. Inside was a transfer of deed document. It was time-stamped 9:15 this morning. Buyer, Vance Capital Holdings, Limited Liability Company. Property, 42 Oak Creek Lane, Westport, Connecticut. I looked up at Sebastian. You, Saoyuting Haling, 2 hashes greater than you bought my house? I bought the debt from the bank this morning, Sebastian said, I paid off the outstanding balance in full. The bank no longer owns the property. Mark no longer has any claim to it. So, Saoyuting Haling. 2# is greater than I felt a surge of hope, wild and irrational. So you saved it? You did this for us? Sebastian looked at me, and for a second, I thought I saw pity, but it vanished, replaced by steel. I did not do it for you, Jane. I did it because it was a sound investment. The market in Westport is recovering. The land value alone is worth more than the debt. But Saoyuting Haling, too, I stammered. But we live there. Not for long, Sebastian said. Mark lunged forward. You cannot do that. There are eviction laws. Tenants' rights. You have to give us 90 days. Sebastian looked at Mark with disdain. You are not a tenant, Mark. You do not live there. And Jane? Jane is a squatter in a house she has not paid for in 6 months. I paid Mark, I screamed, turning on my ex-husband. I gave you the mortgage money every month. I wrote you the check, and he spent it. Sebastian said simply, he bought clothes. He leased that car outside. He bought the affection of your children with gifts he could not afford. Using your money. While you scraped by, I looked at Mark, the man I had defended, the man I had listened to, the man who had convinced me that Sebastian was the enemy. You stole from me? I whispered. You stole my house? Mark sneered, his facade crumbling completely. Oh, shut up, Jane. You let me do it. You are so desperate to keep the peace, so desperate to be the cool mom and the understanding ex-wife that you never checked the statements. You are pathetic. You deserve to lose it. I slapped him. It was not a cinematic slap. It was clumsy and weak, but it connected with his cheek. Mark raised his hand to strike me back. Do not. Sebastian's voice cracked through the air like a whip. Mark froze. He looked at Sebastian, then at the 2 large security guards who had quietly entered the room and were standing by the door. You are trespassing, Sebastian said to Mark, and you have committed fraud. My legal team has already forwarded the forged documents to the district attorney. The police are on their way up. Police? Mark's eyes darted around the room. You cannot prove I signed it. We have the notary who witnessed it. Sebastian said, she is very eager to cut a deal to avoid jail time. Mark looked at the door, then at the window, as if contemplating a jump. Then he looked at the girls. Bella, Chloe, come on, Mark said, his voice shaking. We are leaving. No, Sebastian said. The girls stay with their mother. You are leaving. In handcuffs, as if on qui, the double doors opened again. 2 uniformed police officers stepped in. Mark Miller, one of them asked. Mark's shoulders slumped. The arrogance drained out of him, leaving a small, scared man in a leather jacket that was too young for him. As the officers cuffed him and led him away, he started shouting. It was her idea. She wanted the money. She told me to do it. I watched him go, feeling nothing but a cold numbness spreading through my limbs. The door closed, leaving me alone with my children and the man who now owned my life. Bella and Chloe were silent on the sofa. Bella had stopped recording. Chloe was crying softly. They understood enough to know that their father was gone and their mother was broken. I turned to Sebastian. I clutched the folder to my chest. Sebastian, I began, my voice trembling. Thank you. You saved us from him. I, Saoyuting Haling. 2# is greater than. I do not know what to say. I am so sorry about yesterday. I was stressed. I was manipulated. I I took a step toward him, forcing a smile. We can fix this. I can pay you back. We can start over. Sebastian looked at me. He walked around the desk and stood in front of me. He was close enough that I could smell his cologne, sandalwood and expensive tobacco. Start over? He repeated softly. Yes. I nodded eagerly. I love you. I do. I was just lost. Sebastian reached out and gently took the folder from my hands. He placed it back on the desk. You do not love me. Jane, he said, you love the idea of safety. And right now, you see me as a life raft. That is not true. It is, he said. Yesterday, when I was just a man in a truck, I was an embarrassment. Today, in a suit and a corner office, I am a savior, but I am the same man. Jane, the only thing that has changed is your perception of my utility. He walked back to his chair and sat down. He looked at the shattered glass on the floor in the outer room, visible through the open doors. You have 72 hours, Sebastian said. I blinked. What? To vacate the property. He clarified. Standard eviction for foreclosure is 24 hours. I am giving you 3 days because I am not cruel, but I am not stupid. You, Sao Yu, Tsing Hao Ling, 2# is greater than you are kicking us out? I gasped. But you bought the house. I bought the asset, Sebastian corrected. I did not buy the family. But where will we go? I cried, panic rising again, sharp and suffocating. I have no money. Mark stole everything. I know, Sebastian said, and that is a tragedy. But it is not my tragedy. It is yours. He picked up a pen and began to sign a document on his desk, dismissing me. Sebastian, please. I fell to my knees. The dignity I had tried to maintain shattered like Chloe's vase. Please do not do this. Look at the girls. They are just children. Sebastian stopped writing. He looked at Bella and Chloe. They are children who throw wine on guests. He said, they are children who mock people for their clothes. They are children who break art and feel no remorse. They are the product of your parenting, Jane. And if I let you stay, if I bail you out again, they will never learn. And neither will you. He pressed the button on his phone again. Escort Miss Miller and her daughters out, he said into the speaker, and ensure they have the number for the local shelter. They might need it. The security guard stepped forward. Sebastian, I screamed as they took my arms. You cannot do this. You loved me. Sebastian did not look up. He kept writing, his pen scratching smoothly across the paper. I loved the woman I thought you were, he said softly, almost to himself, but she never existed. The guards pulled me toward the door. Bella and Chloe were wailing now, realizing that the iPads and the sushi boats were gone, replaced by a terrifying uncertainty. As we were dragged out of the penthouse, past the broken glass, past the judgmental assistant, I looked back one last time. Sebastian was just a silhouette against the bright city light, a dark figure ruling over a kingdom I had been too blind to see, and too arrogant to keep. The doors slammed shut. The elevator arrived. We were going down. The elevator ride down was physically identical to the ascent, yet it felt like we were plummeting into a ravine. The gold mirrors that had seemed opulent 10 minutes ago now reflected a distorted, pathetic trio. Bella had mascara running down her cheeks in jagged black streaks. Chloe was chewing on her fingernail until it bled, and I stood there, clutching my purse. My reflection showing a woman whose soul had been surgically removed, leaving only a hollow shell in a red cocktail dress. 2 security guards stood with us, their hands clasped behind their backs, staring straight ahead. They did not speak, but their silence screamed of judgment. They were not escorting guests. They were disposing of trash. The doors chimed and slid open at the lobby level. I had expected anonymity. I had hoped we could slip out the side door and vanish into the cracks of the city. But Mark had ensured that our exit would be as loud as our entrance. Through the glass walls of the lobby, I could see the flashing red and blue lights of police cruisers. They were parked aggressively on the sidewalk, cutting through the lunchtime foot traffic. And there, in the center of a swirling crowd of onlookers, was Mark. He was not going quietly. We stepped out of the elevator and were shepherded toward the revolving doors. Every head in the lobby turned. The receptionist, the one Mark had screamed at, watched us with a look of cool satisfaction. She picked up her phone, likely texting a friend about the drama unfolding in the Vance Tower. Outside, the air was cold and biting. The wind whipped my hair across my face, stinging my eyes, but I could not look away from the spectacle on the curb. Mark was pressed against the hood of a police car. His hands were cuffed behind his back. An officer was reading him his rights, but Mark was drowning him out with a stream of profanity and accusations. "I told you," Mark screamed, twisting his head to look at the gathering crowd. "It is a setup. Sebastian Vance is a crook. He stole my house. He is sleeping with my wife." I froze on the bottom step of the building entrance. The crowd rippled. Dozens of cell phones were raised in the air, their dark lenses pointed at Mark like the eyes of curious insects. And then, as I stepped into the light, the lenses pivoted. They turned toward me. "That is her." Someone whispered loudly. "That is the wife. She looks like she is dressed for a party." Another voice sneered. I wanted to dissolve. I wanted the concrete beneath my feet to open up and swallow me whole. This was the nightmare I had spent my entire adult life running from. The loss of dignity, the public spectacle, the branding of being trash. "Mom, everyone is looking," Bella whimpered, trying to hide behind my shoulder. "Get in the car." "Yes, sir," the officer said, shoving Mark's head down to protect it as he guided him into the back seat. Mark saw us then. He pressed his face against the window of the police cruiser, his breath fogging up the glass. He was shouting something, his mouth moving frantically, but the heavy door slammed shut, sealing his words inside. The cruiser pulled away, sirens wailing, cutting a path through the traffic. Mark was gone, the father of my children, the man who had orchestrated this entire disaster, had been hauled away like a common criminal, and I was left standing on the curb with 2 crying children and no way home. Mark had the keys to his car, and even if he did not, the car was likely being impounded. We were stranded in downtown Hartford, 30 minutes from home, with the eyes of 50 strangers burning holes in my skin. I fumbled for my phone. My hands were shaking so violently I dropped it. It clattered on the sidewalk, the screen cracking down the middle, a fitting addition to the day's destruction. I picked it up and opened the rideshare app. $75. The surge pricing was active. $75 to get back to a house I no longer owned. I checked my bank balance. $112. I booked the ride. I had no choice. As we waited for the car, a woman in a gray business suit walked past us. She slowed down, looking at the girls, then at me. "You should be ashamed of yourself," she muttered, clutching her briefcase tighter as she hurried away. I stared at her back. She did not know me. She did not know Mark had lied. She did not know I was desperate. All she saw was a woman who had caused a scene at a respectable place of business. And in the court of public opinion, perception was the only truth that mattered. The ride home was a funeral procession. The driver, a young man with a heavy beard, glanced at us in the rearview mirror every few seconds. He did not turn on the radio. The silence was thick, filled only by Chloe's soft sniffling. My mind raced. Sebastian had given us 72 hours. 3 days. 3 days to pack 15 years of life into boxes I could not afford to buy. 3 days to find a place to live with bad credit, no job reference, and 2 traumatized children. I hated Sebastian in that moment. I hated him not because he was wrong. I knew, deep down, he was right, but because he had stripped away the one thing I valued more than anything, my mask. He had exposed the rot beneath the foundation. We exited the highway and turned onto the familiar roads of Westport. The autumn leaves were turning brilliant shades of orange and red. The lawns were manicured to perfection, and the pumpkins were arranged artfully on porches. It was a picture of suburban bliss, a world I had fought so hard to belong to. Now, it looked like a stage set I was being fired from. As the car turned into our cul-de-sac, my heart stopped. There were 3 cars parked in front of Mistress Gable's house. A small group of women stood on the sidewalk, the unofficial board of the Whispering Pines Homeowners Association. They were holding coffee cups, their heads leaned in close together. They stopped talking the moment the strange car pulled into my driveway. They watched as I climbed out of the back seat of a Honda Civic. My dress rumpled, my makeup smeared. They watched Bella and Chloe stumble out, their faces blotchy and red. They knew news in Westport traveled faster than fiber optic internet. The police scanners, the gossip from the bank, the scene at the office. Someone knew someone who worked at Vance Tower. It was already out. I kept my head down, ushering the girls toward the front door. "Jane!" Mistress Gable's voice rang out. It was not a greeting. It was a summons. I paused, my hand on the doorknob. I took a deep breath and turned around. Mistress Gable walked across the lawn, stopping at the property line. She would not set foot on my driveway, as if the failure radiating from my house was contagious. "Is it true?" she asked, her voice carrying clearly in the crisp air. "Did Mark get arrested for fraud?" I swallowed. "I will not discuss this with you, Janet." "Oh, I think we need to discuss it," she replied, crossing her arms. "The police were here, Jane. A sheriff's deputy came by 20 minutes ago. He taped a notice to your door. We all saw it." I turned back to the door. There, bright orange and undeniable, was a new piece of paper. Eviction notice. I felt the blood drain from my face. Sebastian moved fast. He was not waiting for the 72 hours to start the paperwork. He had initiated it the moment he signed the deed. And frankly, Mistress Gable continued, gesturing to the black oil stain that was still marring the driveway. "We are concerned about the property values. If the bank, or whoever owns it now, does not maintain the yard, the association will have to intervene. We cannot have a slum in the middle of the street." A slum, that was what my home had become, in their eyes. "I am handling it," I whispered. "You are evicted, Jane," Mistress Gable said, her voice dropping to a theatrical whisper that was meant to be heard. "You are not handling anything. You are leaving." She turned back to the group of women. They shook their heads. A chorus of disappointed clucking. I saw a phone raised. Someone was taking a picture of the eviction notice. By dinner time, it would be on the neighborhood Facebook group. I pushed the girls inside and slammed the door. I locked it, then the deadbolt, as if the locks could keep out the shame. The house was cold. The heat had been turned down to save money. Bella sat on the stairs and pulled out her phone. She swiped the screen, her face illuminating in the dim hallway. "Oh my God," she gasped. "What?" I asked, leaning against the door, my legs giving out. "Mom, look." Bella turned the phone toward me. It was a video on TikTok. It had been posted 30 minutes ago. The caption read, "Crazy family gets kicked out of Vance Tower. Dad arrested. #karma. #drama." The video showed Mark screaming as he was cuffed. It showed me, looking wild-eyed and desperate, shouting at the police. And then it panned to the girls, looking terrified. It already had 50,000 views. "Read the comments," Bella sobbed. I took the phone. User 123. "Laugh out loud. Look at her dress. Who wears that before noon? Trash with cash. Saoyitsing Hauling. 2 hashes greater than. Oh wait. No cash. Westport mom. I know her. She lives on Oak Creek. Always thought she was a fake. Vance fan. That is Sebastian Vance's building. Did they try to scam him? Good luck. He is a shark. Truth hurts. The kids are the worst part. Look at them rolling their eyes while their dad gets arrested. Bad parenting, 101. I dropped the phone on the carpet. It was not just the neighborhood. It was not just Mistress Gable. It was the world. The digital footprint of my failure was permanent. I had wanted to be envied. I had wanted to be admired. Instead, I had become a viral cautionary tale. I looked around the hallway. The family photos on the wall seemed to mock me. The smiling faces of a family that had never really existed. We were frauds. We were grifters. And now, we were homeless. I slid down the door until I hit the floor, pulling my knees to my chest. "Mom?" Chloe asked, her voice small and trembling. "Are we poor now?" I looked at her. I wanted to lie. I wanted to tell her it was a mistake, but the orange paper on the door was vibrating against my back. "Yes, Chloe," I whispered, the truth finally breaking through the dam of my denial. "We are." And for the first time in my life, I did not care who heard me. The audience had left the theater, leaving us alone in the dark. The sound of clear packing tape ripping against the serrated metal teeth of the dispenser became the soundtrack of my purgatory. It was a harsh, screeching noise that tore through the silence of the house, a violent punctuation mark to the end of my life in Westport. 72 hours. That was the mercy Sebastian had granted us. A standard eviction usually gave 24. But Sebastian was a businessman who understood logistics, even when he was executing an emotional execution. He knew it took 3 days to dismantle a lie that had been 15 years in the making. I sat on the floor of the master bedroom, surrounded by cardboard boxes I had scavenged from the back of a liquor store on the edge of town. The irony was not lost on me. I was packing my designer wardrobe. Dresses from Saks, shoes with red soles, handbags made of Italian leather, into boxes that still smelled faintly of cheap vodka and cardboard rot. My hands were dry and cracked. I had broken a nail down to the quick, and it throbbed with a dull, persistent pain. I looked at the closet. It was half empty now, looking like a mouth with missing teeth. "Mom, where's my charger?" Bella stood in the doorway. She was not helping. For the last 2 days, she and Chloe had sat on the living room floor, surrounded by the debris of their own rooms, refusing to lift a finger. They acted as if this were a temporary inconvenience. A hotel mix-up that I would eventually fix if they complained enough. It is in the box marked electronics, I said, my voice raspy. I had not slept in 2 nights. I cannot find it. Bella whined, kicking the doorframe. And why do we have to take the ugly sheets? Can we not just buy new ones for the new house? I stopped taping the box. I looked up at my daughter. She looked so much like Mark. The same entitled tilt of the chin. The same refusal to accept reality. There is no new house. Bella, I said, the words feeling like gravel in my throat. We are going to a 2-bedroom apartment in Bridgeport. It is a rental. It comes with furniture that smells like smoke. We are taking the sheets because we cannot afford to buy a pack of gum, let alone linens. Bella glared at me, her eyes filled with tears. Not of sadness, but of rage. I hate you, she spat. This is your fault. If you had not made Daddy mad, if you had not tried to fight Sebastian, we would still have the house. Daddy said you ruin everything. She turned and stormed off. I sat there, the tape dispenser heavy in my hand. Her words should have cut me, but I was already bled dry. Mark had done his job well, even from a jail cell, where he was currently awaiting a bail hearing he could not afford. He was still controlling the narrative. He was the martyr. I was the incompetent shrew who had lost the kingdom. I stood up, my knees popping, and walked into the hallway. The house looked different now, without the clutter of our daily lives, without the strategically placed throw pillows and the artfully arranged books. The flaws were visible, the scuff marks on the baseboards, the water stain on the ceiling I had been hiding with a tall plant. It was just a building, wood and sheetrock. It had never really been mine. It had belonged to the bank, and then to Mark's lies, and now to Sebastian. I walked down the stairs, my hand trailing along the banister. I remembered the day we moved in. I remembered carrying Bella, who was just a toddler then, up these stairs. I had promised her a castle. I had promised her a life of ease. I reached the kitchen, the scene of the crime. The dining table was gone, sold yesterday to a second-hand furniture dealer for a fraction of its value just to get cash for the moving truck. The room felt cavernous. I looked at the spot where Sebastian had sat. I could almost see the ghost of him there, wearing that flannel shirt, holding the wildflower bouquet. I walked over to the counter. There, pushed into the corner behind the toaster, was a single, dried flower, a purple aster. It must have fallen from the bouquet he gave me. I picked it up. It crumbled between my fingers, turning to dust. I had gaslighted myself into believing he was the enemy. I had let Mark's voice drown out my own intuition. Sebastian had offered me stability. He had offered me kindness. He had offered me truth. And I had spit in his face because the packaging was not shiny enough. My phone buzzed on the counter. It was a text from the only person who had reached out to me. The leasing agent for the apartment in Bridgeport. Keys are under the mat. Rent is due on the 1st. No pets. I looked at the time. It was 4 o'clock. The deadline. The movers. 2 college students I had hired for cash were waiting outside to load the last few boxes. Chloe walked into the kitchen. She was holding the vintage encyclopedia Sebastian had given her. She had tried to throw it away, but I had fished it out of the trash bin. "Mom," she asked, her voice small, "will I still go to the same school?" I looked at her. This was the conversation I had been dreading. "No, honey," I whispered. "We are moving to a different district, but Ling. 2 hash is greater than my friends," she whispered, clutching the book. "Your friends?" I said, feeling a tear finally escape and track through the dust on my cheek. We're never really your friends. They were friends with the house. They were friends with the pool. Chloe looked down at the book. She traced the gold lettering on the cover. He was nice, was not he? She asked softly. Sebastian. He tried to give us books. I nodded, my throat constricting. Yes, he was nice. I walked over and hugged her. She felt stiff in my arms, but she did not pull away. It was the first time in years I had hugged her without worrying about wrinkling her clothes or messing up her hair. We were just two shipwrecked survivors clinging to each other on a raft. Let us go, I said. We walked out the front door. The moving truck was idling in the street, spewing gray exhaust into the crisp autumn air. I turned back to lock the door. I placed the key under the mat, just as Sebastian's assistant had instructed in her cold, formal email. I looked at the driveway. The oil stain from Sebastian's truck was still there, a black scar on the concrete. Mistress Gable had called the association, but I had not cleaned it. I left it there, a monument to my mistake, a permanent reminder that I had judged a book by its cover and burned the library down. Goodbye, I whispered to the house. I walked down the path. I did not look at Mistress Gable's house. Though I saw the curtains twitch, I did not care anymore. Let them watch. Let them whisper. They were watching a ghost, the Jane Miller they knew. The woman who hosted brunches and drove a leased SUV was dead. I climbed into the cab of the moving truck, squeezing in next to the driver because there was no room in Mark's car, which had been repossessed that morning. The girls were in the back seat of the Uber I had ordered to follow us. You ready, lady? The driver asked, chewing on a toothpick. I looked at the rearview mirror. I saw the house shrinking as we pulled away. It looked beautiful. It looked perfect. It looked like a lie. Yes, I said, turning my face forward to the gritty industrial road ahead. I am ready. The engine roared, drowning out the silence of the suburbs, and we drove away from the paradise I had destroyed, heading toward the reality I deserved. The radiator in the corner of the living room hissed like a dying animal, spitting steam against the peeling beige wallpaper. It was the only sound in the apartment, competing with the heavy bass of reggaeton music thumping through the thin ceiling from the neighbors upstairs. I sat at the wobbly laminate table, staring at my hands. They were raw, the skin around my cuticles cracked and stained with grease. I had spent the last 8 hours scrubbing industrial fryers at a diner 3 blocks away. My back ached with a dull, throbbing rhythm that matched the bass upstairs. It had been 30 days since the elevator ride down from the penthouse. 30 days since the police cruiser took Mark away. 30 days since I traded my identity for a set of keys to this 2-bedroom box in a part of Bridgeport where the streetlights flickered and the sirens never stopped. Dinner was a box of macaroni and cheese, the neon orange powder clinging to the overcooked pasta. I had made it with water because we were out of milk. Mom, this tastes like plastic, Bella said. She pushed the bowl away, the plastic spoon clattering against the laminate. She was wearing her old private school hoodie, now stained and fraying at the cuffs. She refused to take it off, as if it were armor protecting her from the reality of our new zip code. Eat it. Ella, I said. My voice was flat. I had no energy left to argue. I cannot eat it. She whined. It is gross, and the Wi-Fi is down again. How am I supposed to talk to Lexi? She is posting pictures from her ski trip, and I cannot even load the story. Chloe sat next to her, hunched over her phone. The screen was shattered, a spiderweb of cracks obscuring the image, but she swiped at it furiously. Dad said he is going to get bail soon. Chloe mumbled. He said his lawyer is working on a deal. He said he is going to come get us and take us to Florida. I looked at Chloe. She was delusional. Mark was not getting bail. The public defender had told me last week that the fraud charges were piling up. Mark was going to be in prison for a long time, but I did not have the heart, or perhaps the cruelty, to tell her, or maybe I just wanted them to have hope so they would stop looking at me with such undisguised resentment. He is not coming. Chloe, I said softly. You are lying, Bella shouted, slamming her hand on the table. You just want us to be miserable. You want us to stay in this dump because you are a loser. Dad was right. You ruin everything. I looked at my daughter. In the harsh light of the single bulb dangling overhead, I saw the truth. She was not a victim. She was a product. She was a product of my vanity, of my desire to be the cool mom, of my refusal to say no. I had raised her to value things over people, and now that the things were gone, she had nothing left to give but hate. I stood up and walked to the window. The view was a brick wall and a fire escape rusty with neglect. My mind drifted back to that night. The dinner, the roast chicken, the wildflowers. I closed my eyes and replayed the moment. The wine splashing on the flannel shirt, Sebastian's shock, the silence. If I had just spoken up, if I had said, Bella, apologize immediately, if I had handed him a napkin and said, I am so sorry, let me help you. If I had just been a decent human being instead of a shallow social climber, I would be sitting in a warm house right now, maybe not the penthouse, but somewhere safe, somewhere loved. I would have a partner who looked at me with respect, but I had laughed. That laughter had cost me everything. It was the most expensive sound I had ever made. My phone buzzed in my apron pocket. I pulled it out, my heart giving a small, pathetic flutter of hope. Maybe it was a mistake. Maybe Sebastian had changed his mind. I looked at the screen. It was a text message from a payday loan company. Get $500 fast. No credit check required. Apply now. I stared at the message. The blue light illuminated the grease stains on my uniform. Mom, Bella screamed from the table. You are not listening. I need a new iPhone. This one is lagging. If you loved me, you would figure it out. I turned around. I looked at the two girls sitting in the gloom, their faces illuminated by the devices that had replaced their souls. They were angry, they were hungry, and they were mine. I let out a short, dry laugh. It sounded like the radiator hissing. I figured it out. Bella, I said, tossing the phone onto the cheap sofa. I figured it out a long time ago. I walked into the kitchenette and turned on the tap to wash the pot. The water was cold. It was always cold. I scrubbed the pot, the metal wool biting into my skin. I scrubbed until my hands were red. I was scrubbing away the memory of the woman who wore silk dresses and judged people by their shoes. She was gone, and she was never coming back. The room grew dark as the bulb flickered once, twice, and then died completely. Mom, Chloe shrieked. Fix it. I stood in the dark, listening to them scream. I did not move. I just stood there, letting the darkness wrap around me like a comforting blanket. This was my life now, and I had earned every second of it.